My name's Councillor Tim Bowen and I will be chairing the meeting today. If you could all make sure if you need to ask a question, you raise your electronic hands, and if you could keep your mobile phones on silent for the duration of the meeting, please. This meeting is also being recorded and will be available for repeat viewing on the website following this meeting. We've had 3 apologies: Councillor Byman, Councillor Curtis and Councillor Morgan. Item 2, declarations of interest. Have anyone got any declarations, please?
I see no indications, Chair.
Okay. Item 3. This is a response from the Chair of the Swansea Bay City Region Joint Committee in relation to gross value added. The letters are on pages 3 to 8 of the scrutiny papers and is for information. Do any members have questions or comments? If anybody would like to say anything? No. And this is for noting. Agenda item 4, Pembroke Dock Marine updates. This is on pages 9 to 78. And we can have a presentation by Steve Edwards, Commercial Director, Milford Haven Port Authority. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. It was great to see some of you down at the port at the turn of the year, and it was happy that I actually presented on this very subject for the Joint Committee last week. I was going to cover 4 headings. My understanding, Chair, is up to 15 minutes max. Is that correct?
We will go a little bit over if you have to, but we are trying to keep everything within a timescale if possible, please.
Yep, no problem, Chair. I'll try and cover it all off within the 15 minutes, if that's okay. So I was going to just touch on our programme assessment review recently completed. Then just a little bit about the business case addendum and the change request. So all 3 really related in terms of the status of PDM. And then I've just got a couple of visuals to share with the committee in terms of the update PDM, and happy to take any questions if that is okay with you and everybody, Chair. I'll share my screen.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So first thing to say in terms of the programme assessment review, it's absolutely a pleasure that on behalf of the PDM team and everybody involved in Swansea Bay City Deal and PDM, that I've got the opportunity to kind of just focus on some key outcomes and highlights from the review that was undertaken back end of last year. My sincere thanks to a whole raft of people, to all those that actually helped put the review together, those stakeholders who agreed and delivered interviews for us, and finally for everybody that coordinated things like Ian Williams, etc. Fantastic. So very briefly, look, we were all delighted with the outcome of the assessment, and I've just highlighted in green on your screens there, recognising that PDM has made significant progress. It's a flagship component, the Swansea Bay City Deal. They got the vision, collective vision that has been delivered by everybody in PDM. And clearly now, the PDM programme within the Swansea Bay City Deal is providing a platform for future growth, which I'll touch on in the update later. I'll also say as well, in terms of the full team, we've accepted the report in full and the summary recommendations. We're delighted, obviously, that there was nothing critical or essential there. They were more recommendations, and we will certainly take note of them and take them back into the PDM reporting group and action those going forward, transitioning from where we're at in terms of construction and delivery now right through to delivering on the outcomes part. And then the last 2 areas in terms of the review, in terms of the business case addendum, it's quite interesting actually, in that clearly Southwest Wales is a hub for marine energy. Since obviously Pembroke Dock Marine was envisaged, there was a kind of transition, if you like, in the emphasis of marine energy in Great Britain from kind of wave and tidal. Not that people were not supporting wave and tidal, but the onset opportunity of the Celtic Sea floating offshore wind. So that was noted, but helpfully, I think both in terms of the infrastructure that's being created under PDM and also the innovation collaborations through the Marine Energy Test Area and the Marine Energy Excellence, Marine Energy Engineering Centre of Excellence, they actually hold benefit regardless of the marine renewable energy vector. So, you know, the addendum also recognised, you know, a bit of time lapse and funding, but broadly, the scope and the outcomes that we're aiming to achieve are broadly the same. There were two change requests, actually, that were noted within the PAR. One was related to ORI Catapult, in terms of changing the timing to allow some benefit from work with Swansea University. And the second one, which was linked to PDZ, which is now undertaken by Celtic Sea Power, which was linked to aligning the outputs and outcomes to the funding profile. So I'll kind of pause there on the PAR element before I get into the kind of PDM progress update for any questions. But, you know, from our perspective, we were really pleased with the whole process and outcome from the PAR, accepted the recommendations, and now looking forward to the next step. So I'll just pause there, Chair, for any questions from anybody.
Is anybody who'd like to ask any questions, please? No? Okay, Chair, I'll carry on. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll flick quickly over now to a bit of an update for you. Don't be daunted by the fact that there are 11 slides. A couple of these are visual examples of really what Pembroke Dock Marine is all about and what we're aiming at, what we've delivered so far and what we're aiming to achieve. So the first couple of graphics are around the infrastructure. So, you know, Port of Milford Haven, largest beneficiary of the Swansea Bay City deal funding, 21.55 million, and also Milford Haven Port Authority have put 13.5 million of their own funding into the infrastructure. So I just wanted to share a couple of visuals of then progress, then output, sorry. So this is actually the excavation phase of transferring two very old slipways that were actually in place since 1845, believe it or not, at the Port of Milford Haven. And that's now been transformed and completed to the graphic you can see on screen now, to a world-leading 67-metre wide mega slipway capable of transitioning all types of devices, whether that be the new types of vessels, whether it be wave tidal devices, and even components for floating offshore wind. So cables, chains, anchors, moorings. And behind the mega slipway, I'll show you on the next graphic, we've actually created thousands of square meters of flat laydown area. So those are two major components. I was saying to some of your colleagues at last week's update, when we were at Marine Energy Wales a couple of weeks ago, mid-March, we had people coming from overseas asking us, is your mega slipway complete now? Because there's nothing like this in the world. We've got some large devices linked to marine renewables. We'd like to actually build and assemble and then transition to the water. And we're looking forward to engaging with you here in West Wales. So, you know, we're looking very positively about what can deliver there. And just, you might not notice this, but on the right-hand side of this graphic, just below the red, you can see the actual extension of the slipway as well, out another 30 metres on low tide. So that's the mega slipway. That's actually the back of the Port of Milford Haven now. So again, some great flat laydown space. And some of you will recall that was a pickling pond once upon a time, 18 months ago. And that's now been sustainably filled so that, bizarrely enough, if it ever did need to be taken out, it could be, even though it was never used for its first intended purpose. But all that lay down area is there now. And the buildings, we haven't taken down the buildings yet, because my instinct as commercial director is, before you knock down a big building with plenty of space and the inclement weather and cold that we have in this part of the world, the last thing I'd want to do is knock down a building and then a developer come along and say, oh, it'd be quite nice along with a lay down space to have some big airy undercover workspace. So we will do that as demand dictates. Another part of the Pembroke Dock Marine infrastructure are the fantastic new hangar annexes. This is the biggest hangar annex, called Catalina, on the back of the Sunderland hangar. And you can see they're equal sides, plenty of parking out front, electric charging, efficiently heated as well now with new air source heat pumps, and quite critical that these office blocks are actually attached to major warehouses, which is, I didn't know this, to be honest, but major contractors like Southhook and Valero, if you want to win contracts to service those businesses, you have to demonstrate that you have offices actually next to and connected to your warehousing. So again, regardless of the vector, we're hoping that's going to be a substantial benefit for the region going forward. We've already hosted a number of networking events showcasing their availability, and we've got 2 of them under lease already, and a third one being requested lease now. And then a couple of graphics here in terms of the magnet and the centre that PDM has created. So in this photo, you can see on the left-hand side, Secretary of State for Wales. The most important 2 people in this photo, bizarrely enough, is the lady Claire Lawrence in the white hat there, and Jason in the orange. They were the 2 project leads that delivered the Pembroke Dock infrastructure. But basically, these are illustrations now of all the key influencers that are coming down to see Pembroke Dock Marine as part of the Swansea Bay City deal. So this actually is the Maritime Minister, Lord Davis Ogowa. He was down looking and again showcasing us back up. And this is the First Minister who came down to see the PDM assets as well. So I think it's fair to say that the creation both of the infrastructure and the collaboration is being a great success already, and providing a basis for people to come and see us here in Swansea. Last 3 slides for you, Chair, and then happy to take questions as required. What is next for Pembroke Dock Marine? And these 3 slides obviously in English and Welsh, as you can see. Well, what's next now is to really use the PDM partnership, the Innovation Hub and infrastructure, as a platform, which is the intent to really deliver the outcomes that we're aiming for. Against that, both the Port of Milford Haven and the infrastructure, Meta, the test area, and Meath, who have actually invested in circa 17 to 20 direct employees now, need to commercialise the infrastructure resources. And we are hosting a load of launch events and networking events to maximise the opportunities there. And then obviously using PDM in terms of engaging with the Haven Energy Cluster vision and also feeding directly into the Celtic Freeport outcomes. I think it's fair to say, look, this is a personal view, but I think probably shared by many. If we didn't have PDM in place, I'm not so sure the Celtic Freeport would have been such a successful proposition. It really formed the basis and foundation for that, for the 2 key pillars of floating offshore wind and hydrogen for the Celtic Freeport. Look, investment and collaborations don't come without risks. And quite clearly, there are risks of stranded assets if floating offshore wind, wave and tidal and hydrogen, if those ambitions are not supported and those public-private partnerships don't work. There's clearly a risk there for Ori Catapult in terms of the Marine Energy Engineering Centre of Excellence, because WEFO and the funding from Swansea Bay City deal is finished in mid-26, and therefore it's imperative that they now utilise the skills base that we've got within the collaborations and all the different things that we've got on the table in front of us. And clearly an underutilisation of the PDM outputs and non-delivery of the outcomes is the key risk. So to finish on a positive, my last slide, there's some huge key opportunities ahead of us now. As I said earlier, Pembroke Dock Marine infrastructure and the collaborations and the ambition now provides a huge base for future funding leverage in terms of marine energy support. We can really continue now to build on what we've already delivered and use PDM as a focal point for showcasing the region's capability and capacity to deliver marine energy solutions. It's providing a key base for all energy developers who are new, because my experience in the 4 years that I've been at the port to date is when organizations like Equinor, SSE Renewables, RWE already on the Haven, so maybe a little unfair to them, but their teams, they're not local. They don't know the landscape. They don't know the partners. They don't know our academic capability. They don't know that the collaborations exist. So certainly PDM has provided a very, very simple one-stop shop to put them straight in contact to give them a flying start. So PDM, we're hoping now can attract that inward investment, and we're hoping, as we said in the PAR, actually, to play a role of the Celtic Freeport ambition. So I'd stop there, Chair, for any questions, comments, and I'm in your hands. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Steve. First of all, thank you for having all the members down to visit and taking the time to show them around. Really much appreciated. And I'm happy to take questions now, please. Councillor Sparks. I think you was first, wasn't he? Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. It was a really informative visit. It was very worthwhile to go down and see what's been developed. I mean, you mentioned, I guess the critical stage now is the sort of the commercialization. We've got and it's a pattern I think we do see in development. Until somebody's actually finished developing something, then only then can companies really start to get interested. I mean, until you've actually delivered, and you've certainly delivered that. Now we've got the slipway and the massive areas of open space for the wind turbines and so on. I mean, can you tell me, without divulging commercially sensitive information, how the progress is coming in terms of trying to get commercial partners involved, and specifically with the units as well? You mentioned that you've got 2 of the converted Millennium Falcon building offices filled and 1 interested. Are there any other vacancies in the other Sunderland buildings? How many? If you've got if that's 3, how many are left that are vacant, Stephen?
Yes.
Thank you.
So Catalina, thanks for those questions. Yeah, I'll have a go. I mean, the answer to your question and a bit of context. So when we knew that the assets were coming to completion between the middle of last year and the start of this year, we started our kind of marketing and networking campaign. So we've been out, we've been over to Ireland, we've been into Europe, and we've been into England, and we've been speaking with all the different developers and at conferences showcasing when the assets will be ready. So we did try and get ahead of the curve a little bit. We also did some market identification in terms of understanding when fixed offshore wind was kicking off in Ireland, for example, the Dublin Array, and who was winning those competitions, and marketing those assets directly to those types of organisations. The outcomes to date are mixed. In terms of, we've already got Mainstay as an in-house boat builder repair company using the mega slipway. So they've now got an upgraded slipway. So they used to have 20 meters, and they've now got 67 meters to play on, and their crane can actually do a bit more. So they're already using it. We've got interest, as I said, from some wave and tidal developers. It's a shame that the test and demonstration phase for the floating offshore wind is kind of paused, if you like, in that the 400 megawatts, none of the developers, whether it be Erebus, Clear One, Clear Two, or White Cross, have gone in to the CFD round. So they're a little bit behind, and we were hoping that was going to be an immediate opportunity. We also created some pontoons on the back of the ferry link span, and we've now got those first bookings, and there'll be things birthed up against them this week, which is great. And the laydown, again, is starting to be taken up by some early, I can't say too much about this, but I'll just say a hydrogen developer is at draft heads of terms status with us. which is great. So a bit mixed, but probably for the first year we're not doing too badly. So we just need now to focus. It's a real shame, if I'm honest, that our Flomis bid was rejected, because if that Flomis bid was accepted, we would have immediately started work on the other side of the port and created an integration facility, which probably would definitely then be needed by the test and demonstration developers for their anchors, chains, moorings. That might be a bit further away now, so we're looking to seek alternative financing for that. So ambition is still very much the same, but we now need to work a little bit harder there. And to directly answer your question, the biggest annex attached to the hangar that I showed on screen, that one is still available. We are currently looking at options for that, but no interest in that. The two smaller ones on that particular building, one is leased and one is almost leased. We're just waiting to sign the contract. Busa have taken the hangar annex on the eastern side of the port next to the Busa building. So I think that is 3 out of 4 either leased or going to be leased with one vacant.
Happy with that, Councillor Sparks, yeah?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, and please keep an eye out for please keep my apologies. Please keep an eye out for events on our Pembroke Port notifications. So we're holding an agents day next week again to provide all the agents that operate in the shipbuilding industry and an organisation called the Global Underwater Hub that have access to all the supply chain across all the different marine vectors. We're hosting them to really try and showcase these assets and obviously the services of Ori Capital Nice and also the test area as well as part of this. So yeah, hopefully they'll go well.
Thank you. Andrew, I did see your hand up. Have you got a question?
No, I was covered by Councillor Sparks, thanks. And thank you for the visit. That was very informative. Thank you.
Oh, no. Thank you for your time.
I can't see anybody else with any questions. Steve, would like to thank you for that presentation. And if we could move on now to agenda item, and that is for information purposes.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, is it okay, Chair, if I dial off at this point?
Yes, certainly. And thank you very much.
Thank you too. Diolch yn fawr.
We move on to agenda item 5, campus project update. And this is on pages 79 to 86 of the Scrutiny papers. And the presentation will be taken by Miles Willis, Strategic Development Manager. And over to you, Miles.
Thank you, Chair. It's okay if I share screen. I've got a short presentation. I think it's in the pack with you, but I'll go through it at fairly quick speed to take questions. That should be visible now. I hope you can see that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good.
Yep.
I'll just arrange my screen, sorry. There we go. Well, Prina, thank you very much for having me this afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm doing this presentation. Professor Keith Lloyd, who's the SRO for the campuses project, sends his apologies. He has a clinic this afternoon, so he's asked me to step in. My job in the university is looking after some of the strategic projects that the university entertains, such as certainly the City Deal projects, things like very current projects around Tata Steel and our relationship with them, how we can work with local authorities and local companies to enhance that, I suppose, benefit to the region, but also sports, medicine, health in general, life sciences, so quite a range. So I'm here today to speak about the campuses project. I'm also on, for information, I work with John Burns on the programme board, the City Deal, and have been doing for probably about 3 or 4 years, I think, John, maybe even longer than that. So this is, I'm conscious that the last time this came before you was about 2021, so it's not been before you for quite a while. So we can give you an update of where we are. This is a little reminder first of what it is and who we are. It's a mixture of delivery people. So this is with Swansea University as the lead delivery partner. We're working then through ARCH, the Regional Collaboration for Health, which involves the two health boards, Halvar and Swansea Bay University Health Board, and of course City and County of Swansea Council as well. So those are our partners within the project. What's it doing? Well, it's essentially looking at, from a sports angle, how do we link the sporting world into the medical world? And we've chosen a route through this is the technology world, because this is also going to, I suppose, resonate with the city deal outputs around regeneration. So we're looking at not only community involvement and general health of people, the Swansea community, the wider West Wales community, and our student community, but also linking them with businesses. This would be new startup tech businesses, linking sports tech to medical technologies. Good example of that, in case you're thinking, what is sports tech? Mouthguard is a really great example. This was a company that spun out of the university. It was in a rugby context. You've got a mouthguard which has load cells within it, and it measures contact within rugby tackles, etc. That then links into how much contact players are actually getting in their heads. It links because it's got accelerometers in there that measures the G-force really in those head impacts. And then we look at it from when we transfer then to the medical aspects of it. We look at head injuries, we look at long-term dementia effects. So it's that bridging the gap. It's a really great example of how sports tech and med tech can work through. So we're linking with our, I suppose, expertise long-term in life sciences. We have a number of Institute of Life Sciences here in the university. They incubate small companies. We're then looking to build on the success of that. They were ERDF funded, European Regional Development funded, but look then to, I suppose, catapult those into a more job creation, looking at the next factories of the future around the region. So that's kind of what it does in a nutshell. There's a team in place, and I'll explain the next couple of slides of where we are in our delivery. This is, as you're aware, the City Deal funding funds. There's £15 million for this project, and it's capital build. So it doesn't fund the revenue side. So the university has recognised the important role it has to play in regional regen, and it said, well, we will resource this, and this is an idea of the size of resource behind it, and then we will use that capital infrastructure to boost that next scale, the phase 2 developments, and I'll talk about that as we go through the presentation. So there's quite a large number of staff throughout the university. They'll come and go as the project matures. For example, we've been quite heavily reliant early on our legal representation to look at funding agreements, etc. So a lot of people in there. It's probably a bit small to see, but I'll just pick out one to show you our kind of level intent at the minute. We have just on a fairly a couple of days a month just employed Alan Wynne-Jones. So he is our sporting ambassador. He will link with companies. He will link with med tech, sports tech sector. So he's on an ambassador role. He's an alumni of the university. So we're using the sort of some fairly high profile colleagues within this. It's got lots of things to do. It's got lots of outputs, and I won't dwell on this thing because these are in your pack. But it's got benefits. It's got to deliver as part of the city deal. There are some fairly short-term. What are you going to use that £15 million for in the next sort of 3-4 years to capitally build, and then what does that release then and catalyze in the future? So we've got to do some building. We've got to. There's up in Morriston Hospital. There's a management centre that needs to be refurbished, 700 square metres of office space. We'll be doing a new build down on Scrutiny Lane. I'll talk to you a bit more about that. We will also be applying for planning permission to enable some access up into Morriston Hospital. That then unlocks the larger piece of land in Morriston to develop an innovation park. That's about 55 acres. And then equally in Swansea Bay Sports Park, which is on Scrutiny Lane here, there's a further 57 and a bit acres, and he's developing around a sports park. I'll talk about those. That's where the largest investment is coming in, or that catalytic investment. And you'll see there we've listed the city deal outputs around jobs, around that GVA, and I know you've been discussing our GVA and our economic impact. More important, I think some of the things around improving actual health of the region. We've had a health needs assessment of the region, and you'll probably not be surprised to learn, there's a lot of uptake we need to do in that. It's also about local employment and keeping that, and we're using our local supply chains, etc., and circular economy. So there's lots of things there that we're just starting to get on that road. And I'll give an example of why we just started. You've probably had a number of projects brought before you in various states of maturity. This one, I think, John, it's the last one to come through. I think we're just about there. Yeah,
it is,
last one to come
Miles.
through.
Sorry,
Thank
it
you.
is. Yeah, yeah.
So we've been rattling around through funding agreements, and I think, and I'm glad to hear from Steve earlier on. There's a great example, really, of these projects are complex. They're multi-partnered. They've got a cascade of funding agreements from UK Treasury all the way down through the local authorities. If you've then got delivery partners, as we have in our case, the Health Board, it's then secondary funding agreements and getting all those linked through. That's now signed. It was signed in January, I believe, January, February this year. So only just signed. I suppose one of the advantages of having this linked into our strategy as a university is we're going to do it at risk. So irrespective of us having a funding agreement in place, we understand the timeliness and the importance of this. So we'll start to do it, and then the funding agreement will come into place. So that's now signed. We are currently displaying a amber green delivery confidence rating, and we're going to go through another PAR assessment review the end of this year, so around December time this year. The reason for that, I suppose, is the project's just entered delivery, so it's reasonable to expect they're going to go through a change notification process with the project management office, portfolio management office, to look at what are the effects of this slight delay from the funding agreement on the deliverability of the benefits. We still understand as a project we're going to deliver those benefits, but the timescales have now been moved up compared to our original outline business case. So we've got some risks. I think it is it's worth, just because some of these will be risks that you've seen from other projects. I wanted to touch first around, there's a lot of city deal projects that are creating office space across the region. But if I talk perhaps initially from a Swansea perspective, we've got things like 7172 Kingsway, we've got Palace Theatre, we've got Precinct up in SA1. I would probably open it up a bit to Neath Talbot, and we've got Bay Technology Centre, lots of office space. Since these were envisaged, of course, the state of an office has changed completely. It's no longer what we envisaged back in 2017. So we're really keen to link in with the other projects and understand, again, if I use Swansea as an example, an Invest in Swansea prospectus. And we're really keen to make sure that the office offer within the region is very clear and how they're distinct from one another. What we don't want to get into is almost a competing for space throughout these city deal projects. We feel the particular offer from these offices is actually the medtech companies need to rub shoulders with clinicians and sports people. So there's quite a unique offer. However, we see our role as in the university of how these offices all cascade together, and there's actually a commercialization route through these office spaces. So we're working with people like Tramshed, for example. We really want to work with Swansea Bid when they're putting together this prospectus for Swansea. And I think I would urge probably around the region to have a regional prospectus of what we can offer throughout the 4 counties wouldn't be a bad thing. Affordability, construction risk. I think you've got a construction risk assessment before you sometime today. This building was under an increased finances of 4.4 million due to construction costs. We've gone through a process of, I hate the word value engineering, but looking at the spec of the building. We are fixed on a size of building for this. It's an output of the project. So we've got deliverables within this building to do. This is at Scrutiny Lane. But by doing things like making corridors a bit thinner, and we've managed to save some monies. Again, the university recognises the strategic importance of a building on Scrutiny Lane. It's a statement building. It's in a high-profile place. Those of you know Scrutiny Lane. It's actually the catalytic development start of the rest of that site. So we recognise that as a university and have underpinned that funding gap within the university within our capital plan. That has been caught within the PMO's construction impact assessment programme. I think again it's worth just being open around this about the private sector engagement and investment. These are different times what we are. We are still firmly of the belief that our private sector and our public sector investment is achievable throughout this project, and I'll come on to some of the strategies we're going to use to ensure that those are in place. Funding agreements I mentioned before, there was a delay in them. It's caused a delay now in getting probably move into full business case. So that will be a change notification going into the PMO. And similar with looking at benefits realization, it's really making sure that all partners, delivery partners, in our case, the health board and ourselves, recognise the contractual obligations really of the city deal and our endeavours to achieve outputs and outcomes according to the funding agreements. I won't dwell on that one, but I'm sure you'll be very aware of the governance arrangements around city deal projects. Just to touch on, I suppose, there's a campuses project board that's got the health boards and the PMO and the council on it. But also each retrospective partner will have their own internal governance boards, and I'll just circle these for now. For example, in Arch, in the council, in the health board, and in the university, and they all come together. So we'll have a decision to be made. We'll go back to the retrospective governances, agree that decision, bring it back up again. So private investment, because it's something that certainly it is a challenge, and we're not going to sort of back away from what challenge this is to it. So we've gone to external consultation to say where are the opportunities for sports tech and med tech globally. You know, we have, as Swansea University, we're regionally based, but we have to have that global vision as well. So we've had a couple of pieces of work done for us. So Urban Foresight was one, and Arcus was another one, around where are these private sector med tech people coming from? How do we get them into Swansea? How do we get them across Severn Bridge? And one of the interesting pieces around this it's actually, if I'll take medtech as an example, global leaders in medtech are probably Imperial College, London, they're in Oxford and Cambridge. So there's a kind of golden triangle down there. However, according to our consultants, actually, once you've gone through that innovation process and you're looking to build the factories or that next phase of commercialization, there's no space there and it's all expensive. So what we're doing, one of our strategies as a university, is to link with these people through various research programs and then be that next conduit through. So when they expand their technology readiness, they go to pre-commercialization, they're linking them with Swansea University and its Institute of Life Sciences to grow that commercial offer. We've got relatively cheap land in here and we've got a lot of it. So we're looking to identify those processes. There's a really useful bit of work there that understood what our role is in sort of UK PLC. I'll touch a little bit about Morriston campus because this project is happening in Singleton and in Morriston campus. There's some initial catalytic monies from City Deal about planning permission for this access route and refurbishment of a management centre down there, which is again more clinical office space. But it will start to look at the development of technologies in burns, in plastic surgery, in regional pathology, trauma, orthopedics, and cardiac care. So we're working very closely with Swansea Bay University Health Board and their master planning. So they have their own master planning division now about what that next phases are within there. And there'll be some announcements fairly soon, I think, from the health board around some of those announcements in Morriston. We've done some layouts. I mean, I won't dwell on that one. That's a layout of Morriston Management Centre. But if I go on to briefly, this is now gone into planning. I think it went in last week. This is Scrutiny Lane. For those of you who don't know, this is just opposite Singleton Hospital. It's a really predominant site looking across the running track. This is a new building that's going to be from City Deal funding, that's part funded by the university as well. So we've just completed REBA Stage 3. We've got a cost report from there. They're on the external facades, how the building works, the spaces that we need to generate within it, both within our commercial tenants and our own innovation milestones within it. Planning permission says they're May 24. I think planning permission has been submitted now. I'm working with Swansea Council to go through that process. It's a pretty iconic building. We've said to the architects, and again, I won't shy away from this. There's quite a nice old building there already. There's a pavilion, a sports pavilion, 1920s. And when we started this process, we looked at the options around this pavilion. It would be nice, would have been really nice to keep it there, to do it up. We looked at that, it would have been an extra £5 million, and this was crikey, 3 years ago. So that would have probably elevated it up. It's in a very bad state of repair. It doesn't have the size of space we require for our commercial tenants within the building. So we took the opportunity there to have a look at a new build in its place. We actually went through, we did a pre-consultation with a heritage client to understand what the heritage implications of this. And we also consulted with CADU to look at a potential listing status of the building. They concluded that it wasn't listable, so we're proceeding along the lines at the minute to replace with this, I think, fairly iconic building. Just some pieces here along in passing, really, and I suppose it sets the wider realm of this project, because we have been asked at both the programme board and joint committee, what are your links with Pentra Owl and how do you link in? Well, they're kind of inextricably linked, and a great example of this is a health needs assessment of the region. So we undertook some work with Arch around what are the challenges facing this region. We worked very closely with Pentra Owl. There was, I think, we've got a business development manager within campuses that links and meets fairly regularly with Pentra Owl's business development manager. We've got a shared prosperity funded project with Pentra Owl. We've got a skills and talent project with Pentra Owl as well. So lots of links within there. And I think perhaps around this innovation space, there's a lot more links we can start to look at and work through. Quick one around, again, this is Scrutiny Lane. We're looking towards the sea, just about to see it there. Singleton Hospital University. This is the kind of size of what we're looking at within Scrutiny Lane. The first building that City Deal funded is here, but there's a wider aspiration both from the university, from the community angle about sports provision. So we have just had some shared prosperity funding to work with Swansea Council to look at what that might be, and that's pretty much it. That's I suppose the remit of that, the scope of that, is what that might be, as far as how it might run. Was there any joint venture type arrangements within there? How it might be managed for both students, for community, for elite athletes, and for professional athletes. So we obviously got very close links with Scarlets and Ospreys and Swans, etc. I mentioned before, we have already started. We started at risk. So this is, you may have seen, those of you who drive past Scrutiny Lane, there's a 3G pitch just gone in, just around here. We've done some upgrades to the hockey stands. We've got some new temporary changing facilities. So we've already started, there's new floodlights, etc. And that will be an ongoing process, funded through a combination, I think, of any JV, of any private investment, of any university investment going forward, cognizant of the fact that these are very challenging financial times. So that was the master plan of Scrutiny Lane, a brief master plan then of Morriston Hospital and some of the things they're looking at. Forgive me, I'm not too up to speed on the Morrison Hospital side of it. I'm sure we can get colleagues in to brief the committee here, the Scrutiny Committee. But we do work. They've now set up their own internal master planning, phase 2 master planning group, chief exec run, to look at what these might be, and that would be an inclusion as well of a Institute of Life Sciences, so similar to what we've got down here in the university. Success has already started. I said we've signed these funding agreements in February or late January, I believe. There are some monies already coming in, about £3 million in total. Some of it from HEFGU, Shared Prosperity, Skills and Talent. But if I take those Skills and Talent, Shared Prosperity, they're kind of meant to be feasibility studies. So I'm hoping those are actually, again, it does the groundwork on which to base a lot of the next level of investment coming in. So we're very, I suppose it's what the university does. We are a funding application body. We do research. It's our kind of bread and butter, really. It's our teaching, etc. On the back of that, we're also trying to grow student numbers around sports, things like sports psychology, sports, media sports, as well as things like physiotherapy, etc. So there's a lot of additional benefits, certainly from the university, you can get from that process. How are we going to do it? Well, the strategy for looking to but ultimately to get investment into this process and buy-in, our initial ones are to look at sporting governing bodies. So we're going from a sporting angle first, this sports tech angle. We've recently signed an MOU with Swim Wales, with Hockey Wales. We're hosting West Wales Women's Player Development Centre and WRU. I think that would be, again, to create the critical mass. There are additional, I can't, unfortunately, for commercial sensitivities, mention yet, there are additional conversations going on throughout, I suppose, throughout Welsh sporting scene to get more strategic partnerships within here. A good example of that is something that's starting to bear some fruit would be Vodafone. We have a joint project with them in the digital infrastructure project. They're really keen in the sporting world, as you know, that they do sponsor a lot of sporting events, including WRU. What role can they play in? They're really interested in data management, health data. So there's a real good synergy from them. That's the sort of company, from a strategic intent of how we're going to get this private investment. We're looking to get anchor companies into these buildings to then start grow it. I think that's probably about it. I probably talked for way too long, Chair. I do apologise. Just to show you some of the, I'll just pick one of these out because I think it was really great for the region. We hosted the Hillary Clinton seminar back in November. We had Vodafone there, chief exec level. Rob Stewart was there, and it put the region on the map that said these people can do something. They're very well connected. They're very quick. They're very synergistic in their thinking. These are the sorts of things that Swansea and the region can do. On the back of that one, Hacer Developments, who are working on another project, City Deal, have been invited to New York to attend Hillary Clinton's showcase event. So these things are put in Swansea and the region on a global stage. I'll leave it there, Chair, and I apologise for talking way too much, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Miles. No problem. I think that was a nice in-depth presentation. And since you have been with us since 2021, I think you said, I think we need to fetch you back a bit sooner than and leave you out in the cold. So yeah, absolutely brilliant presentation, and open to questions if anybody has any. Councillor Hawley.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Miles, for your presentation. Actually, it lends itself to lots and lots of questions that I won't bore the rest of the committee with, but I will say that as a chair of scrutiny in Swansea, there are a huge amount of questions that need to be asked about it. Excuse me. And I think the first one is the St. Ashley Road playing fields. are within the Fields of Trust, which are we've had to give up other. When we've taken those sites away in other parts of Swansea, we've had to give up other playing fields so they go into Fields of Trust, like King George playing fields, which are on Ashley Road. So when you see this development that encompasses quite a lot of that, well, all of St. Helens of Ashley Road, I need to ask the question, what is the legal? What's the legal process that's gone on there? Just to let you know, I will be asking this question in council as well, because we've seen nothing. There's been nothing in scrutiny at all about what's happening on Ashley Road, and obviously on the grounds that are owned by the university. That's entirely up to the university what they do with them. But it is used by amateur football, amateur rugby, and amateur cricket. So we have got a concern over that one. The other thing I think that I need to ask immediately, really, and that is about when you said you've got lots of land and it's relatively cheap, as opposed to Oxford and Cambridge, which is perfectly understandable, considering how much houses are in the Cambridge area. What do you mean by that, and where do you mean by that? I think those two questions are the ones I would ask. Thank you, Chairman. And I know that there will be many others, but we'll have to deal with them in another place, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holly. I'll take those individually, and I'm happy if you wish to take offline or come and visit us and answer these sorts of questions. It may not be me directly, but certainly we've got a number of colleagues that can address that, or come to our perhaps come to our board. We've got members of the council that sit on that board. Jeff Bacon, for example, sits on that board. So playing fields, Ashley Road. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's mixed ownership down there. It's not just ourselves and Swansea Council. There's a third parties within that process. We recognise and have no intent to do anything on King George V. I mean, it's held in trust. It is what it is, but it's badly drained. It's wet. Kids can't play football in there. Anything that we can do to help with that process. If I look at TAM 15, it'll be underwater. I mean, it suffers, and I think it's suffered for a while of lack of investment. So anything we can do around the changing facilities are dreadful up there. Cognizant of its trust status, I think this would come out of this little piece of work that's been undertaken at the minute with shared prosperity funding around what can the council and the university in this case do around that whole demise, and that's why I've included King George V in that, as well as our own land, as well as your land. So it's within it. So we're, I suppose, hopefully to allay any fears. We're not building stuff up there. We've got no plans to do. It's not our land. But I think whatever we can do to help with that community angle, we will try to do our utmost to work with the council to do. The second point, which I think is a really illuminating point that came out of our consultation with Arcus. Arcus was the company that did this. It was mainly around that sort of small to medium. Where are you going to put your factories? Whereabouts in Oxford do you put a factory? You can't put one anywhere. It costs a fortune, as you say. You haven't got to look too far around Swansea. I mean, Velindre, good example.
Yes, that's true.
That to me, as someone that knew the problems and the challenges around Velindre, would be a great example of we would partner with academic institutions and by then the commercial partners of them, and work with them to say, well, come to the region. Look, these are the sorts of places we've got, and I'll use Velindre again. But that's a perfect example of a high profile, highly paid job, rather than necessarily a DHL or forgive me, but that's sort of, as I'm sure you've been made well of in the past. I think that's a great example. There's lots of other. I mean, I've not done a land association around there, but I've certainly worked with the council to understand where are these spots around, both from mega factory size to small unit. If I use Baglan, if I use Neath Talbot as an example, Baglan Technology Centre that's recently opened as part of the city deal, the companies that are in there certainly 3 of them are either spin-outs of the university or have been incubated within the university. So we do have a role to play in all this, particularly if we're working with things like Tramshed in the old Palace Theatre. We're an integral part of that, and we need to acknowledge that more and need to work out how then we move them to that next phase, from the little incubation labs to that factory, because that's where the jobs are going to come.
I totally agree with you. The Velindre is a classic example. It was cost about £50 million to level that works off and put the infrastructure in, and there's nothing there. And when we've asked the Welsh government and other developers to move on to Velindre, they tell us it's too small for factories, etc., etc. So because 500 acres was taken away for house building. But to come back to what you said, yes, there are that type of land is more than available. There's plenty around Forest Farm, possibly around, as you say, around Bagland. I'm not really sure about that area, but around the Swansea area, where those small type of places are available. The Techniums are a fine example. I know people have classified them as emptyings most of the time, but they did work when they were close to the university. And I accept if those are the type of things you're talking about, that's well worth it. And you've got land on SA1 as well.
Yeah, the market intel we've had is sports tech and med tech companies particularly need to be either embedded in a university or embedded in a hospital. That's the rubbing shoulders with profs and clinicians. That's what they need to do. So we're kind of reacting to that need.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else has any questions? Is there just one question I'd like to ask? And Chris, you said this haven't come to scrutiny with yourselves yet. Is there any reason that hasn't come, or is it in the pipeline?
I have no idea. I'm going to have to find out about it, to be perfectly honest, because if it's gone to planning, it doesn't come to scrutiny. But it went it's been to cabinet, but the detail of it is now coming out, so it will come to scrutiny now. I'll call it in. Okay,
lovely. Thank you. Thank you very much, Miles, for that presentation. As I said, we will have you back a little bit sooner than another 2 years. So thank you very much. If you'd like to stay, that's entirely up to you, or if you'd like to leave, thank you very much again.
It's not that I'd like to leave. I've got another meeting to go to at 3. So thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
This presentation, or this is for information purposes, so we know the report. Item 6, Swansea Bay City Deal highlighted report, pages 87 to 100, and this has been taken by John. Over to you, John.
Thanks, Chair. So this is the regular monthly highlight report that you've been in receipt of in previous meetings. Chair, I'm not going to go through every single project. I'll just highlight a few bullet points in the spirit of time saving. But this is an information report. There's a wealth of information per project, just giving an update. Obviously, you've heard from Pembroke Dock Marine and campuses, so I wouldn't do that injustice if I added to the in-depth presentations you've had. But if I start with the marketing comms business engagement, the one thing I'd like to share with the committee is that we agreed just over a year ago that we would have a Meet the City Deal event in the 4 localities across the boroughs of the region. We've just completed the last one, which was in Margam Orangery last week, or just over a week ago. The events for me have been exceptional. We've seen a lot of footfall in all the events. We had one in the Bic down in Pembrokeshire, the Eggin in Carmarthenshire, Arena in Swansea, and then the final one was Margam Orangery with Neath Talbot, all in conjunction with the local authorities and our partners. And we basically took the whole project team, the 9 project teams, to each of those localities to meet businesses and stakeholders to talk about opportunities. And what we experienced was that there were a lot of people that we wouldn't ordinarily have met from the localities. And they got a chance then to speak to people who were outside of their locality. So what will come forward through governance is a report based around the Meet the City Deal events to give a kind of flavour as to the scope and also the benefits of what we've achieved as a consequence of them. So just wanted to share that. In terms of a couple of other project-related updates, the Kingsway, there's the building completion is still on track for around mid-April. There's a few external works required. Swansea Council have just recently appointed Bouygues to do the fit-out, and there's lots of discussions happening with potential tenants around the heads of terms. And sticking with the waterfront project, the Innovation Matrix, again, that is or should be completed by June. That's the plan. And again, their heads of terms tenancy, they're around 65% of available net space that they've already got heads of terms signed for. So looking really positive around those two projects in the Swansea city centre. Sticking with the construction side of things, Pentre Owl, the Zone 1. If you have driven past, just past McCunnis down in Delta Lakes, please, if you haven't, please do. Visually, Pentre Owl Zone 1 looks very impressive. Within the last period, they had the topping out ceremony, bringing the minister down from UK government. So the whole steel frame has been completed for 5 buildings in Zone 1. They're doing lots of other things in the background, things like a business and innovation plan, again, to try and look at how and what type of tenants will be residing within that property. So again, physically brilliant to see, and the plan, I think, is still October of this year that will be completed. You referenced that we went down to Pembroke Dock Marine with Joint Scrutiny Committee. We also went to Titarian with the county flats in Sandfields in Port Talbot. For me, that was another equally as good visit for Joint Scrutiny to visit. So hopefully that's agreed with the people who could attend. Again, you've had regular updates from HAPS, so that's probably why it wasn't on the radar for today. The other one I wanted to bring in is support innovation, low carbon growth. So the Bay Technology Centre that is completed and open for business, they just attracted the high value manufacturing catapult, and they've signed heads of terms to have space within the Bay Technology Centre, which again will work with lots of businesses and industry around not just Baglan, but also the region. So that's amazing to have that. And there are further leases, particularly on the ground floor, that they said that I think there was 2 leases that they're hoping to sign in April. So hopefully by now those will be in place. And then the other one is around the decarbonisation of steel, the Switch project. So Neath Talbot developed a proposal around the transition board for Tata Steel, looking to seek additional funds around the building and the equipment that goes in it, which relates to one of our other reports around the construction impact assessment. So Chair, there's a lot more information in the report, but that's for you to read in your own time, unless any members would like to raise any points. I'm happy with that report.
Thank you, John. I just coming quickly with that. The Meet the City deal, I think for any new businesses, that was well worth attending. I think it was a big eye opener to what is out there for businesses, which a lot of them would never have known about if this weren't put in place. And the second one is the HAPS visit. That was really interesting to see what is going on, and hopefully, you know, there's going to be a lot more of these buildings built for the people to benefit from them, basically. So yeah, great on that. And open to any questions. Councillor Hawley.
Yeah, I agree with you entirely. I think the visit to Aberafan to actually see those flats was a real eye opener. And like yourself, I hope we can get along to build a lot more of those, because they're really beneficial to the public. I think it was a really good visit, as well as the visit to Pembroke, but I think that was a different type of visit. But the one in Aberafan was really worth a visit. Thank you.
And Chair, as we online more buildings, you know, we've got quite a few now in the pipeline, the Matrix, the Pentre Owl, Kingsway. Hopefully we can do some more site visits through as those come online.
Yeah, lovely.
Okay.
If there's no more questions on item 6, this is for information purposes, so we know that report. Item 7, construction impact assessment summary, pages 101 to 114, and this is for John Burns as well, please.
Thanks, Chair. So the construction impact assessment, again, is a report that's familiar to City Deal governance. This is an updated report. We've tightened it a little bit more, and there's a couple of other features that I'll run through in a second. But the important bit about it is what is the funding gap from when we produced the business case and signed them off. Now, probably the last one was 2020, December 2020. So a lot of things have happened since then. So what we've currently estimating, and it is an estimate, is £43.5 million of what we call gross funding gap due to inflationary pressures and rising construction costs. So that's our headline figure, if you like. There are lots of things that happen within the mitigations around that gap. And what that has resulted in is that there's mitigating actions by the lead delivery organisations have reduced that to what we call a residual impact of 12.75 million. So from 43.5, we've reduced that gap to 12.75. And the common approach is that there's lots of mitigations or options available to project leads. But the ones that are probably the most common, which are highlighted in the report, are either securing additional funds. That could be internal lead delivery organisational funds or external funds, and there's a mix of those. To revisit the construction brief and open dialogue with contractors. Those are the three main mitigations that have been undertaken to reduce that £43.5 million gap. Since the last report that went to Programme Board in March, there's been an increase of around £1.2 million of additional gap identified. That is predominantly through the Support Innovation Low Carbon Growth initiatives. So that's identified in the report. But there was also, to kind of back up what I was saying about the mitigations, there's also a reduction for the campuses project through what they call a value engineering exercise. So that reduced it by about £500,000 through that. So it doesn't change the quality or anything of the build itself. It's just making sure that we do it in the most efficient and effective way around costs. So those are kind of the headlines, if you like. There are a couple of other bits in there around what we call the risk RAG status. So that's red, amber, green status. And we had one reduction since the last report for Pentra Owl across the risk categories. Having closed a risk relating to the programme delay due to pre-commencement conditions that they had. And again, that detail's in the report. But Chair, highlighting those areas are what I wanted to do. All the information's in the report for committee members, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, John. Councillor Holly?
Yeah, thanks, John, for the report. I was interested to see that the £43 million gap has been reduced to 12.75 on the mitigation. And this effect of inflation has been quite severe this time around, and it's not very often you see that. How confident are we on the 12.75 million across the whole of the projects?
So they're estimates at the moment, Councillor Holly. Right. So it's a moving feast, if you like. That's why we've done this report monthly for that exact reason. But the only way that this will go is up, because there's still procurements to come on board and costs to be estimated for further procurements that we are planning to do. So it's unlikely that we would have a crash, if you like, in construction costs and inflation in probably the next year or two. We could, and that would change everything for us again. But the chances are the gap will go higher, and we just need to manage and mitigate and reduce that gap as much as we can. So I'm confident that that's as accurate as it can be. The ones of the 12.75 million, it's in the last table, table 2. To summarise which projects are yet to close the gap to zero. Pembroke Dock Marine, Support Innovation, Low Carbon Growth, Eregan and Digital Infrastructure are the 4 that make up that 12.75 million. But as I said, when more procurements on board, the gap could increase, or it's likely to increase, because some of the business cases were written now a few years ago.
I know that the business case, the ones in Swansea, have grown, substantially. And some of the mitigation to them isn't going to reduce that figure. You're quite right. The only way it can do is to go up. Thank you.
Yeah, and even sticking with the Swansea, so it's probably this, if you like, the split across the 4 local authority areas. And this isn't local authority led. This is the areas, because you've got the universities and health boards involved. But it's around 10% for Pembrokeshire, as in that's the variation, and then the rest are around about a third each, taking that 10% out for Pembrokeshire, for Pembroke Dock Marine. So, but they are being managed, you know, from a Swansea perspective. You've got the local authority, which is quite a small proportion, is probably about 10%, but then you've got University of Wales Trinity St David with the matrix and precinct, and you've also got Swansea University campuses that kind of make up that third, if you like, that I was referring to. But we are working closely with all lead delivery organisations to try and plug those gaps as quickly and as effectively as we can.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Sparks?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Jonathan, for the information. I wasn't going to mention Elegin Dye, but it's on page 100 in the last item. I think it's relevant. Okay, so it talks about the revised Elegin Dye delivery model.
Yeah,
it's now proposed to be a provision of a virtual production facility in Carmarthen campus. Right, so that's a change of direction, which is welcome, and I'm the last person who would want to suggest that we want to invest less in Elegin Dye than anyone else, but being as it's in my ward. But could you please explain to me why, if it's effectively it's a new or revamped project that was going to cost 10.3 million, how is the current estimate that it's going to be 12.9? Why aren't we as a project board saying that you've got you can redesign it, but you've got to do it within the original budget of 10.3, because they aren't building anything. They haven't built anything for this part of the project. And unless it's an allocation across the board for each region that you're saying that's why everyone's spend should go up. What I don't understand that, Jonathan. Sorry, could you help me, please?
No, it's fine. And you probably picked the harder one to kind of unearth in that kind of thing. But for the decision hasn't been made as to what Eregin Phase 2 is yet. There's an idea, which is the digital production facility that you picked up on, but that's an idea at the moment, and there's costs, and what all of the projects are governed by is basically the envelope of money that they had from City Deal, but the contributions from private and public sector, but also the outputs, you know, the delivery of a building, and then the outcomes. It could be jobs, it could be wage uplifts, it could be increased land value, wherever the commitments are within each of the business cases. So Eregin as a whole, and Phase 2 being the second component, which is yet to be built, is still up for debate. So what University of Wales Trinity St David, with the recently appointed, or say recently, last summer, Elwyn Evans was appointed as Vice Chancellor. What Elwyn and the senior team now are doing is taking stock of all the different projects that they got, particularly around capital infrastructure, Eregin Phase 2 being part of that, as was the matrix and the precinct in Swansea Waterfront, and they're assessing the need, if you like, from industry and the need from a university perspective. So even though this idea has been put forward, it hasn't been approved, it hasn't gone through a change request, because that's what it would have to do through governance. It's just their current thinking of what that Phase 2 could look like. So the chances are that how you described it in terms of fitting within the envelope could easily happen. It's just nothing has come forward in a formal capacity for us to assess that with Trinity. So I hate the word.
They've been mulling it over, and they think whatever they might do might cost 25% more than what they thought they were going to do before. That's effectively what you're telling me.
Potentially, but that nothing's been set as to that's the direction of travel just yet. So it's a delivery solution, which is an idea as opposed to something that's been put into practice. So until all the
money,
are assessed,
the figure, sorry, the estimate, the cost, that's not all directly the City Deal money, is it? That's also the partner money and the funding coming in. So it's
the package.
It's worth remembering that as well. Okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you.
The City Deal funding, Councillor Sparks, is fixed. So it's 241 million. We don't get additional funds through City Deal. It would have to, if that ended up being the case, the 2.65 estimate, it would have to be plugged through other alternative funds.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
No worries. Okay.
Happy with that, Jess? Thank you, Jonathan. If there's no more questions on that, this report is for information purposes, so we note the report. Moving on to item 8, Swansea-based City Deal portfolio business case update, pages 115 to 416, and this is being taken by Ian Williams. Over to you, Ian.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And sorry for the length of the report, but it's quite a long document these days. The business case. Just as a way of an overview, it's the fifth iteration of the portfolio business case. Originally, it was completed in 2020. It's a requirement of government that the business case is updated annually. We also think it's a good practice ourselves to keep it current and valid as the portfolio rolls forward. This version of the business case has been approved by Programme Board and Joint Committee. It was sent to governments last week for their approval. It will be considered by their Joint Implementation Board in June. And hopefully then that will trigger the release of the next round of City Deal funding. All the information in the business case is based on Q3 returns for 2023-24 that have been through the City Deal governance groups already. In terms of purpose, it's the strategic business case for the portfolio. It's presented in the 5-case model as required by government. It demonstrates the validity for the intervention, the value for money, the viability, affordability, and the deliverability of the portfolio. And what it does is it provides a line of sight from the portfolio into the projects and programs to give assurance to governments that it's progressing well, it's been monitored and delivered according to plan. It also demonstrates progression with the management arrangements for the portfolio. It's obviously a long document, so I won't go into the detail of it today, Chair. The whole document is included in the pack along with the appendices. Within the business case itself, the changes for this version are highlighted in the executive summary and at the start of each of the 5 cases. So what I'll do, I'll give a very quick overview of where we are with each of the cases, if that's okay. Just as a way of a summary, the latest version demonstrates that the business case remains valid across all the 5 cases. For the strategic case, that's about demonstration of alignment to relevant strategies and policies, and demonstration of the need for the intervention. So there's been updated information within the strategic case on policy alignment, the current position with GVA, some changes in the economic landscape that make the intervention even more needed than perhaps before. It's updated the risks and the issues that the portfolio faces as well. In the economic case, that's all about value for money. There's no change to the impact of the portfolio. Its headline objectives are still in line with the original City Deal heads of terms in terms of economic impact and jobs, and the portfolio continues to deliver value for the public pound. In the commercial case, this is all about commercial viability. So there's details on the procurement strategy and procurements undertaken across the portfolio. Just as way of information, procurement to the value of 361 million has been undertaken to date, and there's another 141 million worth in the immediate pipeline, and then a further round of procurements to follow after that. So that section updates the current procurement pipeline, the community benefits, and the construction impact assessment. It's the detail that John provided earlier. In the financial case, it demonstrates affordability, confirms that the City Deal remains affordable as a portfolio. As we've heard, costs have risen, but they are being mitigated for. There is continued slippage within the portfolio. There's slippage forecast of £19.1 million from the previous approved budget. Finally, in the management case, this demonstrates the deliverability across the programmes and the projects, and it confirms that robust arrangements are in place for delivery, monitoring and evaluation of the scheme. This has been tested many times through audit and gateway reviews, and the delivery tools and processes in place are very robust. This version includes updated Q3 information, monitoring and financial reporting. It also includes current business case, gateway review and delivery status across the portfolio. And there's new information on change thresholds and a communication marketing and engagement plan. And that's a very high level overview, Chair, of the business case. There's a lot of detail, as you're probably aware, in the document itself, but I'm happy to take any questions on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and as you said, it's a big report, this is, so it's a lot of reading. Happy to open to questions. No, I think you've...
One second.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, I couldn't get the thing to work. Thank you very much, Ian, for a very comprehensive report. A couple of it's interesting you say about the financial viabilities and the business case. How robust is that business case still?
Well, in financial terms,
in financial terms, yeah.
Well, it remains affordable, is what the business case confirms. That's not to say, as you heard from John in the construction impact assessment, there aren't challenges. There are mitigations ongoing, and there are risks and issues down the line. But at present, it remains affordable across all the programmes and projects.
When you say at present, I'm assuming it's a snapshot from, say, a month ago.
Yes, it's based on the Q3 returns. Right. Yes.
So then, obviously, we'll have a better update at the next scrutiny board, where we can ask for affordability issues on that case again.
Yes, Councillor. There's, as you know, there's regular financial reporting on the portfolio on a quarterly basis, and I think, John, am I right in saying these do come before joint committee and yes, then to scrutiny to look at as well.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Jonathan?
It's probably worth adding, and we've had this fairly recently, Ian, where when we wrote the business cases several years ago now, the value to the economy, the value to the lead deliverers, the stakeholders involved, the beneficiaries of it, it could be businesses, it could be community, wherever it ends up being. We've seen in a few instances now, it's even higher value today than what it would have been a few years ago, for lots of reasons. So if you take, for example, stuff around support innovation, low carbon growth, stuff around the Bay Technology Centre, the decarbonisation of steel project called Switch, they have a higher economic value than what they probably would have had 3 years ago when the business case was written. So even though the values may stay the same or increase, we've seen increases of costs of building buildings, the return of what those buildings will operate, what they will produce, will be higher to us as a region. So we have to keep our fingers on the pulse in that sense, Councillor Holly. But ultimately, the affordability, as Ian said, is the important thing. Our mechanism to check that is through our quarterly financial monitoring. But there's lots of other things that we do around that, including business case updates, just to make sure that they're still viable and affordable and that they're being delivered as planned.
Because some of the, obviously, when the business cases were built up back in 2016 or 15, 16, 17, we've changed completely as a society, and the business world has changed. So, what I'm asking is, how relevant today are we with what we have produced then to what we got now, and obviously we do mitigation to actually put us in a position where we can get the best benefit out of what we're doing. But you know, I think there's an issue that we need to understand what the change is within that business case is, so that when we are asked, we can say, well, yes, this is what they're doing.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. Again, we have a change control procedure in place to capture that exact thing. And you know, you heard again from even from Stephen Edwards and Pembroke Dock Marine, floating offshore wind was not part of PDM. They went through a change control process to incorporate into it. The envelope of money stayed the same, but their focus changed. And what would happen then is the return on that is a lot higher than what they originally planned. And similar for, I give the example of Switch for the decarbonisation of steel. You know, that is even heightened as to the need, if you like, within the region, because of the way that things are going. And again, the Eggin, when Councillor Sparks mentioned about Eggin, you know, phase 2 has to do exactly what you just said, Councillor Holly, in that making sure that it is viable, that it is aligned to business need, that it is aligned to the university's need, etc. So that's what all projects are going through, that pipeline of change control. So we support them through that process.
Yes, there is definitely a rush to build offices, hoping that we go back to pre-pandemic office usage, whereas there is very little evidence to prove that it will go back up to that level, but it will get a little bit more. There will be more people going into offices. So it's those issues, and I'm glad that you're doing this. This if you like, investigation and report back, because those are the things that are going to matter in ongoing after the initial build of all these projects.
Yeah, and even with that one, Councillor Holly, that's one of the hot topics that we talked about probably since I've been in post is, you know, the purpose of the buildings and the type of space that's in them. You know, Eggin has proven phase 1 that it's been near to full occupancy throughout the whole operation of it. It's been in operation for 5 years. Everybody thought that businesses would leave that building. They didn't. So, but some of the space that people require, the Bay Technology Centre has lab space. You know, what Stephen Edwards presented for Hanranics is they're on site where they need to be to work in collaboration with other partners to, you know, put something out into the Celtic Sea. So, you know, that there are really good drivers for having these premises. But again, it's about adapting and making sure that what we signed up to a few years ago isn't a cul-de-sac for us, that we adapt and make sure that we change to the business need. So I think we are doing that. I think it is current, to answer your initial question, but we continue to have to make sure that checks and balances are in place. And that's what Ian does through the portfolio business case.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Holly. I take there's no more questions on this. So we move on. This report is for information purposes, so we know the report. Moving on to item 9, change control procedure and thresholds, pages 417 to 426. Jonathan Burns.
Thank you, Chair. Just to give you a bit of context of this isn't a new thing. We've had a change control procedure in place now for the best part of 2 to 3 years. But what happened last year was Audit put a recommendation forward to the City Deal to Joint Committee to look at thresholds. How do you trigger a change notification or change request? Those are the two mechanisms that we have. So in the report is largely the same as what you had or would have had probably a couple of years ago, but we've incorporated thresholds in there. We've made some word tweaks and we've updated the templates that the project teams would populate for notifications and requests. So, Chair, if I just share my screen for a second, I think I should be able to. Only because this is easier to visualize when it's on the screen. So you can all see that, I'm assuming. Yeah. Okay, so this is table 6.1. It's on page 6 of the report, the change control procedure. And we have 5 categories, if you like, of testing has something changed of a significance. And what we've now done is at least try to quantify the quantifiable domains. So if I just run through them, the first one is around the financing of a project or the cost, time, quality, the benefits to the project, and then the benefits to around the portfolio objectives. So those are the 5 domains that we're kind of testing against in terms of change. So if I go through each one in turn, so the financial cost, any change control is around a plus or minus. It could go up or down, so we always put a plus or minus. And what we've said is either a variation of cost by £1 million plus or minus, or 10% variation to the project element cost. So if it's 10% of building a building or delivering a course or whatever it ends up being, that would trigger what we call a change notification. And to put it in simple terms, it's a heads up, it's awareness of. And if that impacts on other things like portfolio objectives, the delivery timescales, the quality of what you're doing, and it's of significance, it would then trigger what we call a change request, and that would need an approval. And the approvals can go from the local board of the lead delivery organisation or the organisation itself. It could be the region, the Swansea City Region Joint Committee, or even onto the governments for Welsh and UK government. And we've had a variation of all of those different kind of scales, if you want, of approval. The last one we had, to give a practical example, was the Neath Talbot led Net Zero Skills Centre, the 5.3 million. That went all the way to the governments for approval through a change request. But we've had other examples of, if you take the Kingsway, they had a 3-month slippage. It was originally October, then I think it was December, and then that slipped again. So we have a change notification, doesn't need approval. It's just a notification to make people aware that the building opening, the completion of the building, slipped by 6 months, the accumulation of it. So for that, those 2 examples, there's lots of other examples that we've had through the pipeline. There's loads that are being developed with the projects as we speak as well. But if I keep with the time, that was plus or minus 3 months variation to the completed output or milestone within the business case. The quality is harder to quantify quality. So the way that we did it is if you change the scope that affects one of the other 4 things in that list, cost, time, benefits, or portfolio objectives, and it could be things like the fabrication of the building, location, the purpose of the delivery of the building. You may change the reason why you're building it. It could be around sustainability. You know, is it energy efficient? What we call BREEAM status. Or it could be every project has project constraints within them. If you change that as a project, that could trigger that quality threshold. And then the 4th one is benefits. That is taking out or adding a benefit that is committed to in the business case, or changing the value of a quantifiable benefit by plus or minus 10%. And then the last one is around the portfolio objectives. So this is a variation to the contribution towards jobs, economic impact, and investment. So those thresholds now, we've tested them out with the projects. They all seem comfortable with that. It has been approved by Programme Board and Joint Committee. They've been run by both governments. So hopefully these will be the thresholds that will trigger change notifications and requests. But the important thing to note is that if these don't work and we need to adapt them, we will do that within the year. We won't necessarily need to wait too long to adapt these. But they have to work for the projects and the governance approval process of City Deal. And Chair, there's a lot more information, as I said, in the report, but that's the table I just wanted to share on the screen. So I'll stop sharing. I'm happy to take any questions.
Yes, thank you, Jonathan. Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Jonathan. I think with the defining what's a significant change, you know, it clarifies it, so there can't be any arguments going ahead. As you know, so it's sense to do it. I think it's on page 422. It mentions the Change Advisory Board.
Yeah.
Who would sit on that, please? I don't think it's mentioned who sits on it.
So the Change Advisory Board is a board that we would instigate if we required it. To date, we haven't required it, but the type of people who would sit on it would be myself, or people from the portfolio office. It would be potentially somebody from our economic strategy board or program board, the operational group. It's unlikely to be joint committee because they're the decision makers in effect. And it would be unlikely to be a project lead delivery organization because they're the ones who would provide the information that again would be tested and challenged through that, what I would call a CAB, a change advisory board. But we're not getting enough change requests to come through at an approval level to necessarily warrant it. And the ones that we've had, the big hitters, if you like, the 5.3 million, the flow, there was another one. Which other one was there? There was an additional floor, I think, for the Kingsway, which was WEFO funded. Several of those went up to the governments for approval. So it was kind of pointless having a change advisory board in between. But change advisory boards are standard practice for this type of thing.
Yeah, I say it's sense, but thanks for the response. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Councillor Sparks.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Jonathan. I just wanted to thank you for the information today, and I know this might be out of sync with everything, but the visits that have been arranged as well, the HAP site visit and the site visit down at Pembroke Dock Marine as well. I think they've been very helpful, and certainly as a member of this committee, I find it's quite nice to see so much actually delivered and coming together nicely. It's worth just hopefully congratulating you really again and your team and everybody on the work that's being done. So it's more of a comment, Chair, than a question, but I just think it's important to acknowledge that, you know, from today's meeting, again, you can see the work that Jonathan and his team are putting into this is very much appreciated. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor. And like we're trying to use the whole cliches. It is a team effort. You know, how everybody's working together for our PMO helps us to coordinate these things, because there's always a challenge with resources and capacity, as we know. So yeah, everything's progressing as well as it can be under the circumstances. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, for that report, and thank you all members for the questions. If there's no more, this report is for monitoring purposes, so we report. Item 10, Forward Work Programme 2023-24, pages 427, 428. Are there any questions, please?
Yeah, the dates don't look right. The column.
The Sparks?
Sorry, can you hear me? Sorry,
Yeah.
Tim. Sorry, the connection's gone. That's why I've been lowering my my camera. My Wi-Fi is not very good. On it says 2022 and 2023. I think should that be 2023 and 2024?
Apologies, Councillor, that would probably be an error on our part in Democratic Services. I'll make sure that's amended.
Yeah, I know. That's okay. That's fine. No problem. I'm not, you know.
No, it's okay.
I just wanted to check. I'm not going crazy. I mean, we've not invented a flux capacitor or anything like that.
That's
fine.
Well done, Russell. Well done, Russell. It proves he read it, see?
Yeah.
Well done.
Right, if we move on, item 13, urgent items. We're not quite sure if this comes under this, but Councillor Hawley had a question and we're not quite sure if you have asked this.
Yes, I asked that. It did clear it up in the business case and in the financial and the bill contracts. Yeah, it has been answered. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for clarification. So we have no urgent items for today, and that concludes the business for today. And thank you all for attending, and have a safe journey home. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Mike, where's the Ospreys going to be playing then? Come on, you didn't. Oh, he's gone. He's disappeared.